commentator Steve Proudly. Steve, how are you? You well?
I'm very well, David. Thank you for the introduction, and yeah, looking forward to some good racing. Hopefully, maybe a dry race, as you say. It's going to be a race into the night, so it's going to be a very interesting one. It will be interesting to see who can shine this evening, as it were, because the wet conditions was a bit of a level playing field at the Nürburgring last time out. But as you say, George Boothby almost made it look pretty easy. To be fair, he took a pretty dominant win after he led 16 of the 29 laps. So well done to him. But yeah, I think we might see a little bit more potential.
Flying action in a couple of minutes' time, we'll be able to give you an idea as to what's happening. But much to Steve's mentionings, ominous George Boothby is currently top of the time. It's by half a second as we go into qualifying. So we're just underway in qualifying at the moment. Some technical difficulties did mean the broadcast started a few minutes late, so apologies for that. But we will be giving you all of the rest of qualifying, and as Steve mentioned, they'll be giving you the 60-minute race going into the night as well. So it should be a brilliant evening's worth of racing. And like I said, if you are new to the channel, hit that thumbs up button on the video, on the stream, and whatever channel you're watching on, welcome and good evening. And like I say, should be a brilliant evening's worth of racing.
Yeah, I think with that, David, I think we should jump into a quick hot lap video to give everybody the lay of the land and see what it takes to put a lap together around Misano. And then we, as you say, we need to get into qualifying, and hopefully we'll catch the last 10 minutes and see who's going to get that pole position.
Welcome on board a hot lap here at Misano for Sim Racing Hub International, as we're on board the 969 Bentley Continental GT3 of Artworks' very own Marcel V as we come through Misano, the final corner here. Let's turn 16 as we now make our way down the long straight into Variante del Parco, through into turn 1, taken at third gear at 145, down to second around 100 kph through the second apex, that's turn 2, before the third gear corner at turn 3. Then it's a short blast up to Rio, turn 4, as you go down the gears into first at around 75 km an hour on the apex, a very tight one thereof, through into the tight right-hander at 5 before the left at 6, which then puts you onto the back straightaway. Now up to 5th, increasing the speed over 230 km an hour before hitting the braking zone into Quercia at turn 8, down now into second gear at around 85 km an hour on the apex before the rundown to turns 9 and 10, 10 being Tramonto, which is taken from first gear, well in this case second on the Bentley, as we now head our way towards the fastest corner on the circuit, turn 11 Carbone. You can now see the acceleration and going up through the rev limiter up into now what is going to be 6th gear on the apex at 243 km an hour before flying through into turns 12 and 13 before Curva del Carro, which is all the way down into first gear. Full lock on lock there on right hand down at first gear at 65 kph before turn 15, where you're going to take that at third gear at around 160 kph before back down the gears once again down to third through Misano, and then the run across to the finish line here on a hot lap.
And there you go then, nice hot lap there, courtesy of this evening so far, and then Arvin Nahm in the Lamborghini rounding out the top 10. Currently only just over a second between them, as like I say, you see the sun's gone down The lights are all on here at the Misano World Circuit, and it's still got just over 12 minutes left for the guys to circumnavigate rather, this 2.167 mile circuit in the Emiliano-Romagna region, not too far from Imola, for those of you who aren't actually aware. And we'll see whether George Boothby can continue his charge throughout the session this evening. Steve, what do you reckon?
I think he's putting on a good show, to be honest, because let's not forget the top three guys from the last round have ballast. So George Boothby's carrying 40 kilos of ballast compared to the rest of the field. Van der Koot in second is got 20 kilos of ballast on. So, you know, it's not a lot of ballast. Third place gets 10 kilos, second 20, the first place 40 kilos. But for George Boothby to still be a good 6/10 quicker with 40 kilos on, that's pretty impressive driving at the moment, and that's 6/10 over his teammate. So at this moment in time, there's no doubt to who is the number one driver in that team.
Yeah, absolutely, running in the treble six, the infamous number from many people's perspective in the side Max Motorworks Ferrari. And like I say, yeah, he's not only beating his teammate, which is the big battle for every driver in sim racing, let alone the real world of racing as well. But yeah, he's certainly a couple of steps ahead at the moment, but still got a 60-minute race, mandatory pit stop involved, so everyone's going to have to stop at some point to change tyres and put in fuel if they feel the need to. So it's by no means going to be a cut and dry thing for George. And like I say, if it is going to rain, which we don't know just yet, we'll see what happens when the session switches over into the race session. But as we saw last week, a couple of weeks ago at the Nürburgring, as we mentioned, rain is ever the equaliser. So if there's anything that could shift these guys back together, I'm sure that will definitely do the job quite nicely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I for one, it's good to see a wet race, but it's, you know, when it was the first round of the championship, lots of new drivers, and it was a new championship for myself to commentate on, so I'm not familiar with all of these drivers. It will be good, hopefully, to see them in the dry and to see who's really got the pace in what will be relatively good conditions if it stays dry. You know, obviously running in the evening, we're not really going to suffer too much from overheating. If anything, they may struggle to get temperature into the tyres, because we can see top right hand side of your screen we've got a track temperature of 10 degrees, which is pretty chilly. The track grip is at optimum, and we're just set for cloud cover. There is no wind, so it shouldn't be too bad for them. The conditions are pretty good, so we should be on for some good racing, and we should really start to see who's got the pace, and the drivers will start to sort themselves out. And obviously second round, it's all to play for. George Boothby's going to be going out there with something to prove, but if he can go out there tonight and win with 40 kilos of ballast, he's making a real bold statement.
Absolutely, you couldn't have said it better myself. And 35 points on offer for the win, 30 for second place, and then going down in increments of 5 down towards 6th place, and then it goes down towards 15th being the last points paying position. So yeah, plenty of chances for people to get some points in, and with the amount of drivers we've got on the grid this evening, I, by my count, have roughly got about 47, I think, that we're going to have out on track this evening. With it being a shorter track, obviously it's a fair bit shorter than the Nürburgring was a couple of weeks ago. Not only in qualifying is track position going to be important, as we're seeing now. We're seeing quite a lot of the guys that are getting a little bit more bunched up. If you do want to see live timings, then you want to head over to pitwall.live. That'll be able to give you the live timings we're able to see from this end as well. And you will see, admittedly, a fair few that are in the pits at the moment anyway, but you can see there's quite a few numbered cars dotting around the track map at the moment, and with there still being a significant amount in the pits, it means it's going to be a fairly busy one as we go into turn 1 in the race in about 15 minutes time.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got lots and lots of drivers out there, and it is going to be a busy circuit. I mean, let's not forget, predominantly Misano. It's while it hosts all forms of motorsport, it is predominantly a motorcycle circuit. So 47 cars around here, it's going to be mega interesting. But what is good to see as well is it's not an overloaded grid with one manufacturer, shall we say. We have got a good spread of cars. We've got lots of machinery, and we're just looking at the Honda of Chris Hill at the moment. So there are a couple of Hondas on the grid as well. Lots of Audis, McLarens, Mercedes, Lexus, Porsche, obviously, and Bentleys as well. So we have got a good spread, and it is going to be interesting to see what the various machinery does this evening as there's qualifying now, 8 minutes left. So the guys are going to be coming out now with their probably the last sort of fresh tyres, as it were, probably fueling to the end, and just going to try and put a couple of warm-up laps in and try and get that one perfect lap in before the timer hits 0 and the session ends.
Absolutely. See one of the other Hondas, it'd be Chris Hill at Dynamics Motorsports teammate there, just drop it off onto the inside of the lap. I imagine he will just drop it back into the pits, and like you said there, Steve, he'll get hopefully a fresh set of rubber on, take a load of fuel out of the car, maybe see if run it on a bit lighter and see what he can do in anger around the track. But the good thing to see, like I said, we have got 47 guys on the track or in the server at the moment, and we'll obviously see all of them battling it out into the night in a few minutes' time. However, it's still a really good spread of times on the field. I can see at the moment between George Boothby, who's currently running fastest on a 1:32.6, there's only just over or just under 3 seconds between him and 44th place man, Chris Hill, the aforementioned. So you can clearly see there's a really good breadth of talent across here, and I think that's going to make for some brilliant racing. And as those who have driven on Misano before would know, it's quite forgiving in terms of track limits, so there will be the chance for them to do that side-by-side racing, get proper up close and personal, start rubbing some door panels, as we know these GT3 cars are more than capable of doing. And if it's anything to go by as to how they delivered in the wet in a couple of weeks ago at the Nürburgring, then I'm sure we're going to be in for some fantastic door-to-door racing throughout the hour-long race this evening.
Yeah, absolutely. And just touching on what you were saying there about the timings being close, I mean, literally from second place down to 17th place, it is more or less covered by 1 second. So obviously George Boothby's tearing it up out there on his own. The gap has narrowed down to around about 4 tenths, but he's still pretty dominant in pole, provisional pole with a 1:32.625 at the moment. But the rest of the guys behind, it's very close, and some of them are literally split by a few thousandths. So it's doesn't get much closer, but a small improvement on a lap at this stage could see some of the drivers jump 2 or 3 places quite easily with a very small improvement in time. So it's still all to go for, and these guys are going to be pushing as hard as they can. As we're just watching James Warren now coming round, he's not going to improve. He's 4 tenths down, but he's going to carry on, I would imagine, and take it into the next lap to see. He's currently 7th. And he's one of the drivers. He's less than a tenth behind the car in front. So if he gained a tenth, he could jump 2 places in front of. He'd be in front of Sem Spenkelink, who's currently in 5th. So that's how close it is at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, it just makes for great racing for us as well. So I'm really looking forward to calling this one this evening. It's going to be a brilliant race. Like I said a couple of times already, it's going to be an hour-long race. There's going to be 1 mandatory pit stop in there as well, which we expect to see the guys potentially stop for tyres and a little splash of fuel if they need to as well. And yeah, with that spread of field, it does mean that track position is going to be king to a certain extent. But with the layout that we have here at the Misano World Circuit, Marco Simoncelli, quite a few places to overtake. You've obviously got the chicane going into the first corner. You see Martin van der Kraan coming through to put a lap in here. Doesn't look like he can improve. That might well have been his out lap. Is a little bit close alongside one of the Hondas there, but definitely a chance to go for some overtakes into the first chicane, the Valiante del Parco. You've got chances going into Rio, which is where Martin's coming towards now, and then of course you've got chances going into turn 8, of course known as Quescia, which is coming out of this left hand. You've got nice long straight, plenty of chance, nice wide corner as well, so plenty of chance for them to potentially go 3, maybe even 4 wide, as Martin's getting a little bit wide there, hitting those sausage curbs and getting a little bit airborne. He's coming into there, but yeah, plenty of chances to overtake, and I'm sure that will breed for us plenty of action throughout this race session, with just over or just under 4 minutes left to go in qualifying. Still got George Boothby top of the charts, but Niels van der Kelt is not too far away. He's managed to breadth that gap just a little bit closer. He's now just under 3 tenths behind, and I'm sure he'll be hoping with potentially, I would say, maybe 2, maybe 3 laps if he's lucky to get back in under his belt. I'm sure he'll be looking to improve that over the next couple of minutes.
Yeah, just what we were saying there about improving by a couple of tenths. Barney's gone from up to 4th place, and he was, I believe, he's in around about 8th place. So that's a big jump for him. He shot up the leaderboard there. But yeah, just interesting what you're saying about the overtakes. I mean, Misano, I'll be honest, it's not my favourite track, but I'm not the best driver, so my opinion's probably null and void. But some of the sausages on these curbs, some of the sausage curbs are very, very aggressive. and as you can see there, you do need to use as much of the track as you can, but obviously take too much and it can cost you a lot of time. And with this many cars, the cars are going to be bunched up. There's never going to be anybody far away from you to pounce on any mistake that you may make. So you're going to have to be careful. You're going to have to push hard. You're going to have one eye in the mirror and one eye in the car in front. So it's going to be very difficult. As we're just looking at Marcel at the minute in the Bentley, he drove very, very well at Nürburgring last time out in the wet. He had a solid third place, so he's carrying 10 kilos of ballast in this race in that Bentley. But he put the laps in. He nearly capitalised on one of Niels' mistakes towards the end of the race when Niels went off. But he just wasn't quite close enough to capitalise and brought it home in that third place. But yeah, he's definitely a driver to watch. He looked pretty consistent in some pretty difficult conditions last time out. Currently lying 5th on the grid, 6/10 off. But yeah, should be a good race, and that Bentley will be a car to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Even with that 10 kilos ballast to bring home the Boatley, as it's affectionately named, into 5th place with 10 kilos of ballast on, that's probably putting it, I would say, around about a tonne heavier than most of the cars on the circuit at the moment. So yeah, the fact he's managing to do what he is, and we're now seeing, still talking about the top 80, top 20 are all within a second and a half, but going all the way down to 26th place are all within a second and a half of George Boothby, which, if you take away from the fact that Malsharek, who's currently in the pit lane, so presumably has done his qualifying for the session, is 4/10 away from George, and that's going to be a 1:33.0. That puts them all within pretty much near as damn it a second between second all the way down to the mid-20s on the grid. So yeah, we're going to see that accordion effect in full flow as we go into turn 1 on the first, probably for the first few laps, to be fair. If you put all of these guys in a line behind each other, I'm pretty sure we'll be taking up a fair bit of track, and we'll see when we go on to the formation lap, because we'll be doing the full lap so that the guys get everything up to temperature. We'll definitely see just how far that chain is going to be snaking back, and it's going to be one of those things you're going to, like Steve mentioned, you said you're going to be keeping an eye in front of you and keeping an eye on your mirrors. It's going to be really important to almost stay out of trouble, not stay out of trouble, but to an extent, stay out of trouble to a certain extent, because if you get knocked down, there's going to be such an enormous amount of upward graft you're going to have to do to get anywhere back towards those points per positions from first down to 15.
Yeah, just before qualifying comes to an end, last 10 seconds, they're all just trying to get these last laps in. Good evening to Mark Neutlings, says evening fellas. So hope you're enjoying the stream, Mark, and glad you could make it, and it's going to be some good racing. But something I have got experience of that's going to feel very strange for some of the guys tonight, 47 cars on the grid. How long do you have to wait at the back of the grid to actually get set off on that formation lap? It's going to feel like an eternity, isn't it? When you sat all the way back there, you're going to be all the way around that corner. It's from the first car moving away, you are going to be a long way back. And also that translates into when the front cars take the green light, you're not even going to be onto the start-finish straight. You're possibly going to be a couple of corners away from the start-finish straight. So you are going to be a very, very long way back. It's going to be very, very interesting to see. And it can get the nerves on edge, and hopefully not too many mistakes on that first lap, like when they're all bunched up, as you said there, David.
Absolutely, yeah, it gets your nerves on edge, and that's why we all do it at the end of the day, isn't it? So yeah, qualifying all but finished, just a couple of guys left as they're finishing their laps. In fact, they may already be done, and it's George Boothby on pole, as you can see there, running in with a 1:32.6. Second place on the grid is Malsharek in the one of the other Ferrari 488 GT3 Evos, closely followed by George's teammate Niels van der Kelt. So apologies, because the pit wall live that I'm seeing seems to be giving me some slightly different information, but we'll go by what you can see on screen. Effectively, that is the way they're gonna line up, and we'll now get ready to head towards the race. And with the breadth of difference in times across this, it's going to be quite a long evening. And like you say, Steve, it's going to be very interesting to see just how far back that 47th car. And I'll give them a shout. 45 now by the looks of it. So we're having a couple of dropouts, unfortunately. But Sander Vale, who's going to be the 45th man out on track in the number 808 Lexus, I'll be very intrigued from his perspective to see exactly where he's actually going to start his race from, because it's probably going to go green. They'll be going green from around about where they are on the track at the moment, so about halfway down that start-finish straight. you can see how far they go back when they're nose to tail, and it takes up, like I say, we're talking probably about 200-300 metres of worth of cars you've got down there. So with the gaps involved as well, I would hazard they're probably going to be at least 2 or 3 corners from that start-finish straight by the time the lights even go green. So they're already going to have quite a way to catch up on.
They are indeed, but it's good to see it is going to be a dry race. Looking at the forecast at the top right-hand side of your screen again, we're just looking like we've got some cloud cover, which is going to keep those temperatures where they are. I don't think we'll see much change in that 10-degree temperature. And we've got a very, very slight breeze, so there's not going to be any serious effect of the cars on that back straight and through the faster corners, where sometimes they can be a little bit susceptible. If you get a tailwind into a braking zone, it can just upset things a little bit too much, and you can soon swap ends in scenarios like that. But hopefully we're going to get 47 cars, I think it is, away on the green light, and we're going to get 47 cars back for the checkered flag. That's what I'm hoping for anyway, David.
Well, that would certainly be nice, wouldn't it? Obviously, with it being sim racing, there's always the connection thing aside. I know we've had a couple of people talking in the SRHI Discord server, the link for which you can find in the rotating banner in the bottom left-hand corner if you do want to get involved, whether it's in the commentary box with myself and Steve, or whether it's on the track with all of these amazing races this evening. Then you get yourself involved and you'll be able to hear all of the chatter before these races get underway. And there's been quite a few people who've been a little bit worried, and I'm the same with you, Steve. I'm not a massive fan of the Misano circuit from a driving perspective, but I get the impression it's going to give us some brilliant racing throughout this evening.
Yeah, I think from a spectator's point of view, it is a pretty good circuit. You've got a lot of commitment into some of the corners, and as I said earlier, you've got to run the cars out as wide as you can to maximise the drive and to shallow the corners off so you can carry as much speed through them as possible. There's a couple of brave braking zones, as you said, and that back straight, that is absolutely flat. And we have seen in previous races cars going side by side down that straight, and that is a very brave thing to do when you go through that really fast right-hander, well, double fast right-hander into the braking zone before you come back round to the what you would call like back to the stadium and to the start-finish. It's going to be very interesting. It's not for the faint-hearted, so lots and lots of commitment required. And there are a couple of corners, Tremonto, I think you pronounce it, that corner there, you will often see a couple of drivers taking a couple of different lines through there, depending on the car, depending on the setup. And you know that is one of the most important corners on the track, because you have got to maximise the corner speed to get the fastest exit possible to get down that back straight as quick as you can, because that's probably where some of the cars that maybe don't have quite the top end of some of the other cars, that's where you become a little bit vulnerable sometimes if you don't nail that just right, or you run too wide and you lose a bit of speed on the grass or the gravel traps. Then you just got to be really, really careful and really, really precise, but should be some good racing. And we are now underway for the formation laps. The guys are going to be weaving a little bit, trying to get some heat into the tyres, going to be just riding that brake pedal a little bit, put some heat into the brakes for that all-important turn one.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you say, with Tremonto, as you very well pronounced, Steve, I've got to say, double apexed right-hander as well, which makes it even more interesting. You've got to get, like you say, you get the braking point right, you can take a late apex and get that line onto there, and I think we'll probably see quite a few, well, maybe not necessarily some overtakes done into that corner, like you say, because of that long straight that follows, but I think we'll probably start to see quite a few moves being lined up as they go into turns 9 and 10. But George Boothby currently leading the way on the formation lap. They're in single file at the moment. They will shuttle back into double file as we probably go around the back straight, I would imagine. So they'll shift off to the left and right respectively, as they were in the grid. And then when we get round back through turn 16, formerly named as Misano, appropriately enough, then we'll be able to get this race underway. And I would imagine that George is probably just going to look for a nice, quick, nice, easy one. Not too much pressure into turn number 1, into the Variante del Parco chicane. And he'll just want to disappear off the road. Probably put his lights on at some point. I imagine he'll get the in-game message at some point telling him he needs to turn his lights on, otherwise he'll risk being a naughty boy. But you can see there, I've just noticed on the top of the helicam there, the last people on the track have only just gone through Quercia, which is turn 8, so they've still got to go the whole way back down that back straight. So it's we did mention how long this train was going to be. You can see them now going into Tremonto down at turns 9 and 10, and it's just, there's such a massive gap, and it's one of those, if you with a field of this size, if you are going to have a bit of a mare, shall we say, in qualifying, it can put you really, really on the back foot when it comes into the race. But for these front three, Van der Kelt, we've got George Boothby, and of course we've got Christian Malschreck in the Ferrari as well. They are in pole position to get a good start off the line and hopefully drive off into the distance, which I'm sure what they think they'll be doing as we get ready to go, coming into the final corner. And we'll have an hour here at Misano for round number 2 of season number 3 of the SRHI GT3 Championship. George Boothby will lead the way, with Malschreck and Van der Kelt just behind him. Banny in the McLaren with Spenkelink in the Porsche, and then Marcel V running out the top 6 in that 969 Bentley. So waiting for the lights to go green, and it is go, go, go here at Misano as we go down into the first corner. You can see Malschreck covering off from Niels Van der Kelt there. Just about manages to close the door, and it looks like we're all clean going into turn number 1. Looking a little bit like the accordion effect I mentioned, going into the first couple of corners a little bit further down the field, but everyone looks to have got through there unscathed. George Boothby, look at that gap he's got already. He's already gathered, about half a second ahead of Malschreck behind him. And like I said there, he's going to try and do the Sebastian Vettel-esque of his Red Bull days. And I would imagine he's going to try and just disappear off into the distance as we start to see the timings come up on the screen. You can see already gained nearly a second on Malschreck in that point. And we can see that Spenkelink has managed to get his Porsche up into 3rd place in these early stages.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was an absolutely flyer of a start from Boothby, and he did what everybody else didn't want him to do. He really rocketed away when those green lights came on. And to gain a second, 3 corners into the lap? That's some serious drive out of the corners. That's a seriously good start. But yeah, he's doing his best. He's going to pull away, but they do not want to let him get away, because if he gets away after watching him race at the Nürburgring in difficult conditions, this guy does not make mistakes. But Spenkelink is another one to watch. He was in the GT4s last week, had an absolutely fantastic race there. But he's in the Porsche. He's up to 3rd place, and don't discount him from that podium finish come the end of the race, because I know that Sem is a very, very good driver. And he'll do his best. He just needs to keep that Porsche, shall we say, under control and a little bit tidy. But I think Niels will be pushing, because Niels really is the one that's had the bad start from the top 6, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, he started in 3rd, so he's only dropped down 1 position, but it has given Sem Spenkelink the chance to really jump up the field. Banny dropping down a couple of places as well. But it's looking like it's going to be. Niels will be a little bit disappointed with that start. He's already, as you can see, nearly 3 seconds or 3.5 seconds adrift of his teammate George Boothby up at the top of the standings at the moment. So he's going to want to try and get past that Porsche as soon as he possibly can. We know how quick the Porsche can be when it's set up correctly, and we know how much kudos you get for driving a Porsche on the Assetto Corsa Competizione now, due to the should we say erratic nature of some of the characteristics of that car.
It's not the easiest car to drive, buddy, but it's a very rewarding car to drive. And again, I'll go against the grain. It's one of my favourite cars to drive. I do like the Porsche GT3, but yeah, it is a difficult one, but it's very rewarding. But the field is, I mean, he's Boothby's he's around about that 2nd clear at the minute, but Spenkelink's 2.2 back from 2nd place. So those 2 guys at the front, they're really sort of making a bit of a break for it now, and they're actually opening up a gap, albeit Boothby's got a nice 1 second cushion, but beyond that it's 2.2 back to Spenkelink.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you want to hope that like I say, Niels Van der Kelt's going to be wanting to get past Spenkelink as soon as he possibly can to try and bridge the gap between these 2 Ferraris who have, like you've mentioned, Steve, you've completely broken away so far, and I think it's just a case now of Christian Malschreck trying to keep George Boothby honest as long as he can, and maybe see if he can do something in the pit stops. Of course, we do have the mandatory pit stop this evening, so that is going to come into effect. We might see some undercuts, maybe even some overcuts, depending on how the guys are getting on. But it's with a field of 45 cars that we've got currently running at the moment. It's all about track position. If you find that you're going to have a chance to drop in and get a gap in the pit stops, I will think we'll start to see quite a few of them as we currently ride on board with Aaron van Drunen, who is looking like he was under a little bit of pressure going into the first corner there, but just about managed to outbrake the rest of them and keep himself unscathed, at least for the time being. But you can see, I mean, the amount of cars, with there being so many on there's going to be battles all the way through from top to bottom this evening. And I think what we'll probably start to find as the time goes on, obviously we're only less than 5 minutes into the race so far, I think what we'll start to see is pockets of battles going throughout, as you saw. See, we've had Boothby and Malschreck disappear off the road a little bit to an extent. You see one of the Lexus trying to go up the inside into Quercia there, but problem you've got is you try and make a move and you've got 3 or 4 cars in front of you trying to do exactly the same thing. So it's all about planning your moves and keeping an eye on your mirrors for the people who are trying to do exactly the same behind you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, like you say, you make an attack on somebody in front, and you've always got to have that one eye on the person behind, especially when they're as close as these guys. As we can see, positions changing constantly from braking zone to one braking zone to the next apex to the next straight. They're just constantly overtaking, as we've just seen that. Lexus looking very tasty in the rearview mirror of the Pulse Lexus. He's looking like he's wanting to take that position away, but this is a battle for 28, so battling hard all the way down the grid. I think we should need to have a quick look back up at Spenkelink. He's got Van der Kekelt really fixed in his mirrors at the minute, and Niels is really putting some pressure on Sem now, and he's going to try and close that gap down, and he's going to try and loom large in those mirrors and just put some pressure on that Porsche, because it's not always about trying to craft the overtake, as it were, and make it. It's all about sometimes getting some pressure on that driver in front, just forcing a little bit of errors. Like Sem's run a little bit wide there, but luckily he's managed to pull it back onto the track. But that's the sort of thing that I'm talking about, just little mistakes that might allow Niels to pop his nose down the inside and get that Ferrari through back into third place and onto the podium positions.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You'll see that'll happen a lot this evening. I'm sure we'll see. It's not like, it's exactly what you said. It's not about architecting the overtake every single time. It's just about off-putting the guy in front of you and giving them little feelers, sticking the nose in where it probably shouldn't go. As you see, Neil van der Kekelt's going down the inside into one of these corners. They're very, very fast right-hander, trying to get it into the chicane, taking a lot of curb, but looks like he's managed to hold the move. Is he going to hold it as they go into turn number 15? He doesn't, and Spenkelink manages to hold on to that. Lovely bit of defending there, gave him a little bit of room. Lovely racing, the respect from both of those guys, and Niels will have to try and architect another move as we go on to lap number 5.
Yeah, he almost had the job done there, but he's going to go down the inside for turn 1, but not quite. Spenkelink had the faster line staying out wide, managed to cut across the nose of the Ferrari before there was any danger of him losing the position, and it's resume positions for another lap. But Niels has really made his intentions clear, and we can see the battle behind the 4 cars involved in that battle there. That's from 5th place down to 9th place, and they're all very, very close on the track. But also, if either of these 2 guys were to make a mistake, they could very soon lose a handful of positions, not just the one.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I said before, you're starting to get these little pockets. So you've got a couple of Gagala cars, I think it's about 4 or 5 of them in the train behind us. You can see them there as Niels van der Kekelt was a little bit wide coming out of Quersha, probably dips his tyres a little bit onto the marbles, but I'm sure that won't impact him too much. As we now ride on board with Clayton Banny, who is currently sitting in 6th place, lost a couple of positions off the start, which he'll be a little bit disappointed about, and has let through the ballast-laden Bentley of Marcel V in front of him, and he's now coming under increased pressure from Warren in the number 1 Ferrari, who was pretty quick in qualifying. He showed the pace, and now he just needs to show a little bit of that racecraft to try and get past the 720 McLaren. But all of this is just allowing for those little gaps to occur. See that George Boothby's now started to give himself a little bit of breathing room ahead of Christian Malschritt. There's currently just over 2 seconds between them, and then another 3, nearly 4 seconds back to Spenkelink, who is still going to be under an immense amount of pressure from the probably ever more frustrated Niels van der Kekelt in that number 47 Side Max Motorworks Ferrari.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, George Boothby, look at that gap now. I mean, that is obviously, he's built himself a margin. He can start to maybe just manage the gap rather than pushing for purple sectors all the time. But yeah, very, very controlled at the moment, and I don't expect to see anything out of the ordinary from George this evening now. He's got the hard work done, and we're only 5 laps down, so it's going to be a pretty steady race for him with 51.5 minutes left on the clock. I think the interesting bit for George is going to come when he starts catching the back markers, which with 47 cars on the grid probably won't be too long, because people will be tripping up over each other going around this circuit, and I think another sort of dozen laps and we probably will be catching the guys and having to put some laps on them. So as long as he can negotiate traffic all okay, then we should be good. Just seeing Niels now still that half a second back. Frustrating for Niels. He's got it within half a second, 0.3 all the time behind Spenkelink, but he just doesn't seem to be able to get the move done. can see that the Ferrari just looks a little bit more controlled, and he's diving up the inside there. A little bit of contact, but it's no harm, no foul. Hopefully not too much damage to either car there. Spenkling got away with it, but more so Niels really got away with that because he shoved it down the inside. Was it too late? Was it a little bit aggressive? I don't know. I don't think so, to be fair. I think it was ambitious. I think that's a good word to use for that attack.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, yeah, I think Sem left the door a little bit open, but yeah, it looked to me like Niels was maybe a little bit, not out of control as such, but on the edge, I suppose is the best way of putting it. And I think, yeah, I can't see the stewards having anything to do with that. But what this does mean is that little knock between the two of them does bring Marcel V into the equation. Of course, he has got 10 kilos less of ballast on than Van der Kelk does, of course, from finishing third and second respectively in the last round back at the Nürburgring. And Sem Spenkling, because you see one of the Ferraris, I think that was James Warren, going over those very aggressive sausage curbs and launching his 488 into the ether, as it were. But yeah, it's just giving Marcel. Oh, go on, Steve.
I was just going to say, but to be fair, Marcel, he's got warmed up. The Bentley might have just taken a little bit more getting into the flow. He got stuck behind some cars. This guy has got the pace. He has got pace. So I think irrelevant of that mistake from Van der Kelk, I think Marcel was closing that gap because Spenkling, I think he's quick. He's obviously there on merit. He's in third place through ability, but I think Niels would be quicker if he could just get up past him, and that's what he's struggling with. But that is allowing Marcel to catch, and they are going to have a Bentley joining the party within the next couple of laps. So Niels will probably start trying to put even more pressure on that Porsche of Spenkling in front of him, as we can see him right up behind again, and the gap is now just, well, it's less than 0.3. It's just a car's length, isn't it? It's nothing now. He's just in the slipstream, but he's not going to be close enough, I don't think, to try and make a move into turn one. But he's Spenkling, how well is he soaking up this pressure right now? Because I think that's got to be one of the hardest things to do. They always say when someone's in your mirrors and driving close behind you as the car in front, you've got to drive your line as long as possible. Don't drive too defensive, because that is the slower line. Just drive your line, drive your own race, and remember the car behind, he's the one that's got to get past you. He's got to go around you. He can't go through you. So if you drive your line, you're just going to make it that bit harder for him. And if he can maintain the pace he is now, Niels is already showing that Niels hasn't quite got the edge to get past him at the minute. Although he can catch him, he can put him under pressure, he just hasn't got that final bit of speed to get past him.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like Sem Spenkling has got that Porsche set up really nicely at the moment, although the gap is starting to, it's continuing to expand. There's now 4 seconds between him and Christian Maschreck up in second place, and then another 4 seconds ahead to runaway leader at the moment, George Boothby, as that now extends to 5 seconds. It's well worth considering the fact that, like you say, it's a brilliant defensive drive so far from Sem. He's, like you say, soaking up the pressure. I know if it was me in that Porsche, I'd have been in the wall about 15 minutes before, and the race hasn't even been going for that long. So that just probably tells you how good I am at that sort of thing. But yeah, he's doing a fantastic job so far, and I can just imagine that Niels is probably starting to get a little bit wary, like you say, of Marcel V just coming up in his mirrors. Are we getting ever larger? And that Bentley is large enough. As soon as he gets within half a second, it's going to be taking up a lot of that mirror space.
Yeah, absolutely. Marcel is pushing in the Bentley all day. It has to be said, the last couple of laps, that gap has pretty much stabilised. He isn't really catching. Whether that's because these two guys up front aren't fighting quite as much, so they're running more like a race pace. Once they start fighting, we might see the Bentley close up. Although, having said that, in this braking zone here, he seems to have made a little bit of headway. Whether it's a case of through some of the twistier stuff that they stretch it back out again, but he's tantalisingly close, but he's just not close enough to make it a 3-car party at the minute.
Yeah, absolutely. Well worth noting as well that Christian Maschreck does look to be dropping off the pace a little bit as Niels Van der Kelk. Oh, he goes for the move and he's unfortunately contact there. I wonder if he's going to... a bit more as well. So Banny's gone into Spenkling there. Unfortunately, it was just not going to continue on for too much longer. He's gone for a move. He's gone for the... It looked like the door was slightly open. Didn't quite manage to catch the replay on that on the stream, but it looked as though that might have been a little bit naughty. He was certainly close enough to try and look at a move and show him the eyes, but unfortunately that sent Spenkling down into seventh place. Van der Kelk has stayed in third as it stands. It'll be interesting to see whether the stewards are going to have any word about that as we continue on through this race. But unfortunately, it has meant that Banny has dropped way down the order as well. Obviously, he was the passenger in effect at that point, and he looks like he's captured a bit of damage as Tim Muris in the Dynamic Motorsports Honda just sends one down the inside through one of those fast right-handers and gets himself up into 11th place.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, potentially the stewards will look at that move. But again, Spenkelink was driving his line. He left the door open, and I think Neil saw a bit of a gap and thought, I'll see if I can send this Ferrari through that gap. And the contact was made, and unfortunately, it turned the Porsche, and it sent Spenkelink down to what is currently, I think he's dropping down the order. He's in the pits, obviously. Yeah, I mean, so potentially he's gone into the pits now. Maybe he's going to get rid of his mandatory stop and repair the damage. He's going to hopefully try and come back out into clean air. That would be interesting to see where he does come out. I'll keep an eye out for that. And maybe put some hot laps in and try and make some positions back up when everybody else pits. What will be interesting also to watch will be to watch Van der Kette's lap times. His previous best was a 33.555. George Boothby's was a 33.006. So it'll be interesting to see if he can get anywhere near his teammates' lap times, but more importantly, faster than Christian's lap times in second place with a 133.54. So currently the second and third have pretty much equalled their best times, but Van der Kelt, as we know, has been held up, or he was racing close with Spenkelink. Now he's got some clear air. Let's see what he can do.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be interesting to see whether he got any damage as well. It didn't look like there was too much contact between them. It looked like it was one of those, almost a little bit of a nudge that unfortunately sent Spenkelink round, and he's obviously taken a lot more damage courtesy of that contact with Banny. You see one of the Audi R8's got chopped down the inside there. He's completely lost it under braking. I didn't quite catch who that was. It was certainly a bright liveried car. That's something we can say for certain. But it's one of those, because of the speed you take through those right-handers, if you get even slightly wrong, especially if you're in a car like the Porsche, like we say, very susceptible to lift off oversteer. If you get that wrong, if you're not got the setup right and you carry a bit too much speed and you're a bit too aggressive in there, that sort of thing can happen. And we've just seen him unfortunately get it all sorts of wrong and sent himself off into the barrier. But we ride alongside Pete Vayner at the moment, who's currently sat in 14th, and he is one of the semi-pro drivers. You can see by the silver markings on the numbers on the screen there, and he is in the midst of a train that is currently being led by Banny, the McLaren, who obviously got tagged in the incident between Van Kelt and Spenkelink a couple of laps ago. And it looks like, I would imagine Banny's carrying a little bit of damage at the front. You can see a little bit of paint loss. He's under a lot of pressure from Marquez here in the Lexus. Looks to go down the inside. Hopefully not going to see a repeat of the last couple of laps. It looked like he was a little bit more courteous there and gave Banny a little bit of room as he went to close the door. And it's as you were in 11th and 12th place at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mark Knightley just makes a point. Nice to see so many cars and clean. Yes, it's relatively clean, Mark. We've just seen a couple of incidents. But yeah, Banny there and Makesh, that was absolutely... I mean, Banny was so wide. The Lexus went to go really tight down the inside, and Banny just cut across. He knew where he was, and the Lexus gave him room as well. He didn't dive in, so there was no contact made. But I think it's a matter of time before the Lexus is making a move on the on the car in front, on the McLaren, because he's definitely holding him up. And indeed, there goes the McLaren into the pits to repair some damage.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was a matter of time. I was about to start calling it the Banny train, but he's peeled off into the pits, get rid of that mandatory pit stop. Of course, no need for a pit window in this one, so the guys can pit effectively whenever they need to, as long as there is that tyre change completed. As we ride now alongside George Boothby, who looks like he's actually started to take care of a couple of the back markers. You can see one of the Ferraris from a little bit further down the field, just behind him in his wing mirrors. That will most likely be Sebastian Sorrentino, I believe. As he's coming.
Say absolutely, yeah. He's starting to pick off some of the back markers, and it's starting to come into effect where a few guys have gone into the pits for damage. Some of the guys will have been off track and had a few spins and have cost themselves some time. So now it's a case of he's going to come across them. But at the moment, he just looks to be in really clean air. He's doing what he needs to do, and he's pretty much got an 8-second gap. And we're only 18 and a half minutes into this race. That's pretty impressive from George. And let's not forget 40 kilos of ballast on board for him as well. So going really, really well.
Yeah, certainly a statement from the lad, isn't it? I know he did. I know he was very pleased with his win last week, and I know there was potential chance for Niels to ruin that party a couple of weeks ago at the Nürburgring, but there doesn't seem like there's going to be much in terms of that on this occasion. Currently riding alongside Pascal Weisser in the GPR Esports Ferrari, the 145 machine. interesting combination of red, black and green on that one. Certainly wouldn't be a colour combination I personally would go for, but each to their own, and being followed quite closely by Martin van der Klaan in the AMG Mercedes as they go down the back straight and into that succession of sweeping right-handers. They go back, forward.
Absolutely, there's battles all over. That they are thinning out a little bit, and the back markers are going to start playing into it a little bit, as we've seen quite a few guys take the pit stops now, and they're going to come out. Some of the guys, indeed, that have taken the pit stop are going to end up just being faster than some of the guys in front, and they're going to have to try and fight to get their way back through the field. So we should see a few more very, very close battles and some more interesting racing, I think, yet to come, as some of the guys are forced into early pit stops.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be very difficult to tell, apart from George Boothby looking like he's going to run away with the win. It's going to be very difficult to forecast exactly how this is going to end, because, like I say, you've got damage to contend with. There's potential spins that could happen. It is getting darker as we speak. It's now 9:26 in game at the moment, so visibility is going to keep becoming more and more of a premium, and it's going to be interesting to see how these guys get on and when people elect to do their pit stops. You see Raymondi's fan club in the form of Resi JJ in the chat at the moment, currently running in 9th place. Only a second off. Looks like he is the leader in that semi-pro class from what I can see on the timing boards at the moment. So certainly not doing himself a disservice. And I think this is Kern Sector. I think this is the chap who I might have seen, sending it into the shadow realm, as they like to say, on there a couple of laps ago, as you saw around that point.
Yeah, just for the fan club there he is, Giorgio. Just he's in a little bit of clear air, so nothing too exciting going on with the Audi, number 58 Audi at the moment, apart from he is leading his class. So that is all good. Great drive from him so far. He's just got 38 minutes and 56 seconds to keep it there.
Absolutely. He got about 6-7 seconds back to Hutman, who's the second man in the semi-pro class at the moment. So yeah, he's definitely doing a really good job at the moment in that VR Motorsport Audi R8, which is a lovely livery car. I do quite appreciate that matte grey on there, as we now jump over to Niels van der Kelt, and I think that's Christian Malschreck, who's just gone out of eye shot there. So this gap is starting to decrease. If we look at the times that were done on the last lap between the two of them, Niels van der Kelt was 0.4 of a second to the good. Of course, he's still got to keep an eye on his mirrors, because that big old Bentley of Marcel V is not going anywhere anytime soon. They're running very similar lap times, and he'll be looking for a podium of his own.
Yeah, absolutely. And the scary thing is that George Boothby was still the fastest man on the track on his last lap. He's gone a little bit slower on the lap he's just gone around now. Maybe he had someone to lap, but yeah, he was still faster than Van der Kelt. But more importantly for Van der Kelt is that Marcel behind him was actually quicker than him by a couple of tenths. So that gap is coming down between the Bentley and the Ferrari, as you can see on screen. And I think it's only a matter of time before he's looming large in his mirrors and popping into the braking zone and trying to unsettle that Ferrari and put a little bit of pressure on him, and it'll be tables turn for Van der Kelt.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, and hopefully we won't see a repeat of what happened between Van der Kelt and Schwenkeling a couple of laps ago. Hopefully we can keep it a little bit cleaner. Like I say, stewards will obviously look into that accordingly, and that means that all results for this evening's race will be provisional, of course, as we let the stewards do their thing and review any submissions that any of the drivers tend to send through. But yeah, it's one of those. I think Niels is going to try, I would imagine, to try and get on the back of Christian Malschreck and just try to apply a bit of pressure on him instead, just to almost relieve a little bit off of him. He's still going to have to keep an eye on his mirrors, because Marcel, as we saw, is looming ever larger, and he's not going to be going anywhere anytime soon. But yeah, he'll be wanting to almost impart some of that pressure off to Malschreck as well, I'm sure, who is running decent enough lap times. He's still a couple of tenths off the raw pace of the likes of George Boothby and a couple of the guys a little bit further down in the form of Dave Jr. and James Warren, who are currently looking like they're the fastest guys out on track on the pit wall live display. But that's not what we're focusing on at the moment. We are focusing on a battle a little bit further down the field. Currently riding alongside Frans van der Linden in the Sim Racing Holland Lexus, which I have to say, that Lexus is such a nice looking car. It's just something I've never even elected to go for in the first place. But he's running in the semi-pro class, looking like he's got a very good run. Is he going down the inside? Is he on the Porsche? He goes very wide through a couple of corners there. I wonder if he's going to have some sort of warning for track limits. Does mean he's a little bit out of shape going into the hairpin, but Fran's just not able to get alongside enough to make that move stick.
No, absolutely not. And just sort of went to show there down the back straight. It's full commitment. Those two right-handers absolutely flat. Second one, you're just sort of thinking about dropping it down a gear, ready to get into that braking zone. But he just got it a little bit wrong with the Porsche, and he's under massive, massive pressure now from two Lexuses very, very close behind. And the Lexus can be I think a lot of people underestimate the Lexus. I think personally, having driven it a few times, raced with it a couple of times, I actually enjoy it. It does take quite a little bit to get the best out of it, but it's a good car to drive. And again, it's quite a rewarding car. Not as rewarding as the Porsche, but it is a good car to drive.
Certainly can't be the worst car to drive, because I can see at least, well, there's five of them in tandem from Franz all the way back down to the five guys behind him. So yeah, clearly one of the cars of choice, as is the Ferrari, who of course are the top three manufacturers so far this evening. George Boothby still running ahead at the moment as we come on to lap number 17. He's got around about a 10-second gap back to Christian Malschreck, who's starting to fall back into the clutches of this battle that we're riding alongside at the moment between Marcel V and Niels van der Kelt, as we run just towards the halfway point of this race. But yeah, it looks like it's plain sailing for George. He doesn't seem to have come across any scuppers in terms of back markers so far. Hopefully, I'm sure he'll be thinking it will stay that way, and he can have a nice, relaxing end to the evening, and then some hard-hitting questions from myself and Steve as we come towards the end of this race. But in the meantime, he's obviously got to make sure he carries on as ZR. So you see Sem Spenkelink now we're riding alongside. Unfortunately, he obviously carried a little bit of damage. We saw he got hit on, I think, judging by the corners, he would have been hit on both sides of the car by the same driver, unfortunately. So he's probably, wouldn't blame him slightly if a little bit of the red mist had descended on him, but it has dropped him all the way down, unfortunately, down into 38th position. But from what I can see, he is the first running car that has actually completed their mandatory pit stop, so he is effectively going to be that benchmark just to see where everyone else is going to come out. So we'll keep an eye out on where he is on track when we start to see some of the guys come into the pits. We can see Van Drunen's come into the pits, we've got Weiser in the pits now as well. They're obviously serving their mandatory pit stops, but we'll keep an eye up towards the pointier end of the grid and see if we can keep an eye on where they're going to be coming out as we continue on into this race as well. But a lot of action coming down the back straight at the moment. We can see Bas van Mellis under a little bit of pressure from the McLaren behind him. Just about manages to hold him off. Again, it's one of those corners. There's quite a few of them here at Zandvoort where you can take so many different lines. It does potentially leave people susceptible to those knocks that we did see between the Ferrari and the Porsche a couple of laps ago. You can see them running side by side into that back straight. You see full throttle, full power corners. There's nothing to give between the two of them. And Cohen Scepter looked like he tried to get the move done as they came out onto the back straight, but he has dropped back a little bit, and probably the most sensible decision. I can't imagine wanting to go flat out side by side through those two right-handers. I can imagine it takes a fair pair of cojones to do that, I've got to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. It would and it does. This battle for what is third place and maybe soon to be second place, as they have closed right up on the back of P2 now, and this is very soon going to turn into a three-car battle. And what that will do, that will give the Bentley of Marcel the opportunity to attack Niels, I believe, because the rate that they have caught the Ferrari in front is he's definitely not lapping as quick as these guys behind him. So he's going to hold them up, and it is going to be very much a three-car battle.
Absolutely, yeah. And like you say, it was I think it was a 1.7 second gap as they crossed the stripe last time. It's now gone all the way down to just over half a second. It was a second that Niels van der Kelt took out of Christian Malschreck's time on the last lap of 1:34.6 compared to 1:33.6, but both of them, interestingly, peel off into the pits. I wouldn't have expected both of them to come in. It looks like I would if it was me in that position. If I was Marcel, I probably would have done the opposite to whatever Niels did. But it'd be interesting to see how this fares, because you can't imagine there's going to be too much change in the pits as we see now. James Warren in the PBR Esports Ferrari puts himself up into third place, but of course he'll shift himself back down in a couple of laps time, I'm sure, when he elects to take his mandatory pit stop as well. All of which, of course, shifting the appropriately on camera Giorgio Raimondi further up the field as well, which I'm sure Resi JJ will be very pleased to see in the chat this evening.
Yeah, absolutely, up to a credible 8th place at the moment. So he's doing well. But I think, is that the Porsche of Spenkelink that he's
I think it is, yeah. Looks
maybe
like
trying
it.
to unlap himself, or has he put a lap on him? I'm not quite sure where that is at the moment, with regards to whether he's trying to unlap himself or he's just been lapped. But
It's definitely Spenkelink. Yeah, I think he's. Yeah, like you say, I would imagine he's probably just been lapped, but yeah, it's certainly not been his evening so far after that. Well, brilliant defensive display. Just unfortunate that because there's so many options going into these corners here at Misano, these sorts of things are potential to happen, unfortunately.
yeah, absolutely, and really just going to try and watch for when Van der Kekelt and and Marcel leave the pits, as we just need to keep an eye on that, because I think things are going to get tasty on the track with those two guys, although it looks like the loser in the pit stops was Marcel. He's round about 2 or 3 seconds back, I believe, according to the timing screens. We get to see that on track, but yeah, definitely looks like Niels has got a lot of clear air between himself and that Bentley now.
Yeah, he certainly has. It's one of those things, for those of you who've played Assetto Corsa Competizione, you'll know how facetious the pit crew can be when it comes into a pit stop. If you are even a foot away from your mark, it will shift you back and it can lose you all sorts of times. So I can only imagine that's what's happened. But like you say, we'll keep an eye on them. We'll see how they get on. I'll see if we can get you as soon as we can where these guys are in terms of timings, because that'll be very important to consider when it comes back to when Christian Malschreck comes in as well. I'd imagine that both of them are simply just looking for the undercut. It seems like the sensible decision. They know they've got the pace, or they seem confident they've got the pace over Malschreck at the moment, who is currently net leader of the race because George Boothby has dropped into the pits.
Just seeing Spenkelink getting a little bit excited. He's actually trying to unlap himself by trying to get past the great Raimundai, but he's not managing to get past. Obviously, Raimundai is not obliged to let him past. He doesn't have to, but to be fair, in my experience, if the guy trying to unlap himself is quicker than you, it's usually to benefit you to let him go. Don't fight him, just let him go and try and tag onto the back of him and follow him. But obviously, it's at the driver's discretion, so it'd be interesting to see how long he can keep Sem behind him. Just seeing a few drivers starting to pick up drive-through penalties. Those will be for track limits. If you see an SG30, stop-go 30, that will be for speeding in the pit lane. Pretty much that's the only penalties you get this evening. Regarding, they are managed by the sim, so they are automatic penalties, and the drivers have 3 laps from issue to take them. So that's the Audi 622 Audi has got a drive-through there that we can see, but more cars in the top 5, 3 of them actually coming into the pits now to do their mandatory pit stops, and Boothby is in 10th place after doing his mandatory pit stop.
Yeah, it's certainly not too far off the pointy end still, even with a pit stop in tow. You mentioned it there, Steve. You talked about the stop-go penalties and the drive-throughs. Yeah, so it's effectively a 3-strut rule in Assetto Corsa Competizione. You get 3 chances to extend or cut track limits to an extent. It will obviously continue to review that, so it will either tell you whether you've gained time or not, and if you haven't gained time, then you're in the clear. I think the worst one is definitely that stop-go penalty, because sometimes you'll know you've done it, you'll know you've gone speeding into the pit lane, but the sim won't actually tell you until you've left the pit lane after you've done your pit stop. It can be one of those horrible moments. You know what's coming, but there is literally nothing you can do about it, which is not what you want to be seeing. As you see, looks like Nieboer in the 622 Audi has gone in to serve that by the looks of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's usually best to get those out of the way, then there's no danger of you forgetting or missing it and then basically being DQ'd from the race. Potentially, that's what happens if you don't do the drive-through or the stop-go as indicated by the sim. Just looking at James Warren there on screen, he's pretty much in a solid 10th place at the minute. He has completed his pit stop, so we've got 6 cars currently in the top 10 that need to do their pit stops. 2 of them are actually in the pits now, so that just leaves 4 cars left to pit in the top 10, and then we will get a good idea of who's who and where's where and what's what, as it were, in the world of SRHI GT3 racing. We will start to see how that top 10 pans out.
Yeah, absolutely. George Boothby at the moment, it looks like, according to Pit Wall, is about 50 seconds adrift of Malschreck, who's just dropped into the pits, who's our current race leader. The important thing we're going to have to keep an eye on, though, Steve, is going to be that gap between Malsharek and the likes of Van der Kelt and Marcel V. As you see, one of the Lamborghinis looking to try and get some heat into his tyres. I would imagine that's Naam there, I think it is, trying to get some heat into his tyres. I imagine he may have set his PSIs or his tyre pressures a little bit off in his pit stop because he has come in. Wonder if he's got the incorrect pit strategies set up and he's trying to get some heat back into them, because cold tyres around that back end of the track is not going to be something you're going to want to be a part of. You see, Malsharek. Sorry, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I was just going to say George Boothby now back into the lead after 21 laps, and the pit stops are starting to shake out pretty much. After this lap, everybody apart from Kroll in the top 10 will have done their pit stops. So just P2 currently is not relative to where he will be once he's done his pit stops, but Boothby is back in the lead and has got a very, very healthy lead over second place, and he's just now trying to negotiate his way through a lot of back markers, but he doesn't seem to be having too many problems, and he seems to be making pretty easy work of this Misano circuit tonight, David.
He did say. I think he did say it is his favourite, and probably one of the few people who'd say that. But he's certainly proven the point, isn't he? Interesting to note that Malsharek has lost 2 positions in that pit stop phase. So the undercut doing a very nice job for the likes of Niels van der Kelt and Marcel V at the moment. It looks like Marcel's lost a couple of seconds. We mentioned that a couple of laps ago in the pit stop. I can't quite see from the pit wall line at the moment exactly what's going on time-wise. It actually looks like Marcel's a little bit quicker at the moment, but only just. And then Malsharek has come out a couple of seconds adrift of Marcel down in the moment at 5th place, but we'll soon see that change to second as we see Kroll in the second place at the moment in the 933 Lexus has now taken, or is now currently taking his mandatory pit stop. So yeah, top 10 is pretty much levelled out now. Now it's just a case of the last 24 minutes is a mad dash to the finish. You can see how many positions we're going to see changing across the next 25 minutes or so.
Yeah, absolutely. We just got the battle here now for 6th place with it's Warren and Junior. I'm not quite sure why the HUD's showing Warren as in the pits, because he very much isn't. I believe that's him on track, unless I'm mistaken. But it's looking like he's putting that Mercedes under pressure. It's definitely Ferrari putting it under pressure anyway, and I think it is Warren.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, number 1 Ferrari, it certainly looks like it. So I'm not sure why the sim expects him to still be in the pit lane. I was also quite intrigued by that camera angle it elected to show as well, seeing a grandstand with no one in it instead of focusing on the racing at hand. But yeah, definitely putting him under pressure. It'd be very difficult to see if he can get a move anywhere down this back straight. Of course, the Mercedes being an extremely quick car in a straight line, but he has got that benefit of what looks to be a couple of back markers in front of him. So what I imagine he'll want to do is keep nice and close to Junior at the moment, who's currently in front of him. It's Dave Junior in the number 10 Mercedes AMG, and I think he'll probably just want to try and stay as close as possible and try and make it through some sort of move as they go through past the back markers, like I say, starting to come into play more and more as these guys get further and further into this hour-long race.
Yeah, absolutely. And just apologies for the cameras flicking around. We are having a little bit of a technical issue with the broadcasting app, and I think that's maybe got something to do with why it's displaying James Warren as pits. But we're going to live with it. We're going to see it through for the last 22 and a half minutes. So just bear with us if you see any strange camera angles, because it's pretty much out of my control. I think it's a software issue. So we'll just have to roll with it and see what we can do. But yeah, definitely Warren is certainly putting the pressure on the Mercedes at the moment. But he's soaking it up well in the Mercedes, as we see now the 46 Ferrari in 4th place. Pretty solid performance from this guy this evening. He's really he's had a couple of scrapes here and there, but currently in 4th place and looking like he's pretty solid there in that 4th place as well.
Yeah, I think Christian can be probably, I'd say, quite proud. I think he'd be maybe a little bit disappointed he's lost sticks, as he was in 2nd place off the line, but considering the quality and the talent around him, obviously the top 3 now are the 3 podium finishers in that order from a couple of weeks ago. If I was in his position, I'd be very happy. And I think now it's just a case of, if he can try and stick to the back of the likes of Marcel and Van der Kelt in front of him and see if they potentially come to blows. We know Niels is very capable of that in the nicest way possible. We've seen him obviously involved in a couple of incidents so far this evening, but he is going to have to keep an eye out for Dave Jr. and James Warren in the Mercedes and Ferrari respectively behind him as well. And as it all shakes out, you see Sem Spenkelink, who was of course third in the race towards the start of this hour-long session in this SRHI GT3 Championship round at Misano this evening, has dropped himself back down to 17th, but looks to be doing a fairly decent job of getting it back together. So I think what he'll be planning, or hoping for at least, is to try and get up a couple of positions and try and get himself some very valuable championship points, as we're currently through into round 2 of 9 of this season's GT3 Championship.
Yeah, absolutely. A little bit of a wayward line there from, I don't know if that was Banny's McLaren that was off into the scenery, as it were, taking extra track and a little bit more as he just comes into shot now there. But yeah, this is one of the closest battles on the track at the minute, as we see Sorrentino in 39th with a stop-go penalty currently serving that in the pits. That is going to seem like an eternity. Obviously, you've got the time it takes to get into the pits. Effectively, you're doing another pit stop on top of the one you've already done. So that's in 39th. That's pretty much race over regarding any sort of decent positions. He's going to have a lot of ground to make up when he comes out. But we're seeing Chris Hill just at the head of this pack with a little bit of breathing space. He's not under too much pressure. That McLaren, again, way wide off the track. He's going to really have to watch for the track limits, otherwise we could see him getting issued with the drive-through very soon. Yeah,
we'll have to keep an eye on the deltas as well and see if he does get that little DT flash up on the right-hand side. I would imagine that, well, of course it is based on pace, so if he is managing to get himself off the gas a little bit and save a little bit of time, he might be okay. But yeah, he's certainly running it a little bit ragged, as you see. One of the Lexus has got the inside. I can't quite see Frans van der Linden going at the inside of Yannick Valenduk at the moment, and that's giving the Porsche of Nard Cox a chance to go up the inside as well. He's going to be on the outside line going into Tremonto. He's probably not going to be able to make that move stick. Can he get the cut back and see if he can get the run on the Lamborghini down the back straight? Looks like he's not quite managed to do it. Looks like that was a nice little bit of covering from Valenduk there, and just about managed to shut the door and stop Cox from managing to get the move done.
I'm loving your enthusiasm there, David, thinking the Porsche could get the run on the Lamborghini, because that Lamborghini is a rocket ship in a straight line. The Porsche has absolutely lost it. He lost that with the lift off. He just lifted off slightly at the wrong time there in that fast right-hander. Lifted off, and the back end of that Porsche just let go, and that is really unfortunate, because he was actually, besides my frivolity and joking, he was actually doing really well. He was in the slipstream of the Lambo, and he was actually hanging on to him, and he was putting him under pressure coming into the braking zone, but I think he maybe just was getting a bit too close. The fact he was in the slipstream, carrying a bit more speed, he lifted off, and that was it. Game over. Time to swap ends.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, with the Porsche having the fuel tank at the front of the car, does mean as you get to at the back of the car, rather, it does get to the point where you're running on lower fuel. It is going to be a lot more liable to stuff like that, and you see, he just snapped out of his control, and that's shifted him. In fact, it's actually kept him in 24th as per the standings, so he's clearly a decent enough gap behind him. See Banny exploring more and more of the track.
Where is he going?
He's caught Chris Hill.
That's a little bit of contact. Chris Hill was out front of this pack, and he seemed to have lost it somewhere while we were following the other cars. They'd closed up on him. He lost a couple of positions, but that was a little bit of contact there. And Banny, I mean, he's using so much track. They need planning permission for him to rejoin. He's going that wide. It's absolutely insane. He's got to get a drive-through at some point, because track limits, what are those?
Yeah, he's certainly got no idea as to what they are at the moment. I think he's going, look, if it's not bumpy and it's not covered in grass, I think I'll just try and use it. And unfortunately got a little bit out of shape coming out of there. And as a result, you saw what happened next. He went into the back of Chris Hill. Sander Vale doing the same thing. I think he's the only man on track at the moment who hasn't actually come in for a pit stop. Maybe trying to go as long as he possibly can. The old Renault F1 trick from the last couple of seasons, go as far into the race as he possibly can, and see what you can pick up at the end. But looking at the times beneath him, he's probably not going to be able to get a point. You see, Art van Drunen is one of the next people to get a drive-through penalty. I wonder, based on the time back to him, whether he's just done exactly the same thing that Vale and Banny have just done, and just gone extremely wide coming out of that third corner.
Yeah, maybe so. Like you say, Van Drunen with the drive-through. But in the chat, we've got Anthony de Horst. It's a family show, Anthony, so I won't repeat what you've typed in the chat. But yeah, maybe not your best and greatest moments on track this evening. But no, never fear. We have got Silverstone next, so you can. 16th of March is the next round for the GT3s, which will be at Silverstone. It will be streamed live, and you can join us guys for the commentary. And as we just seen there, that is contact again. The Lexus got turned there, and that was very unceremoniously pushed all the way around. It was more than just a tap. He actually pushed him out of the way. So for me, that was a bit of a naughty move, was that one?
Yeah, it didn't look too good, did it? I mean, don't get me wrong, I think Sanders probably a little bit he's very out of sync with the guys at the moment. He is obviously, as we see there, dropping a little bit down the field. Hasn't made his pit stop. He was running a little bit further back than a lot of these guys towards the start of this race, but yeah, unfortunately getting caught up in the wrong kind of battle, and we can start to see now drive-throughs starting to be applied across the field. We can see Nard Cox now, the Porsche we saw jumping across the last couple of corners on the back straight a couple of laps ago. He's now got himself a drive-through penalty, and I can't imagine that'll be the last man we'll see getting one. But currently, Christian Malsharek is looking like he's actually extending the gap a little bit back to the guys behind him, which I'm sure he'll be pleased about. He's starting to make himself a little bit of clean air again.
Just seen George Boothby putting some laps on some more cars currently, as cars in the background running wide again. Like I said, I don't think we've got just under 15 minutes left. I don't think we've seen the last of the drive-throughs this evening. I think some of the guys are running on different track maps to what we're looking at. I think they've got some wider corners and some longer straights somewhere, but certainly getting punished for it with the drive-throughs. And as I say, that's going to really hurt their races and drop them a lot of positions, because it has to be said, to be fair to the guys on track, it's very, very impressive that we've got some gaps. We've got a couple of big gaps. The biggest gap we've got is from first to second of 18 seconds. Yes, you heard me correctly. That is 18 seconds from first to second. But the rest of the guys, relatively close. We've got a few 2, 3 and 4 seconds here and there. We've got some on-track battles of less than a second further down the field. But relatively speaking, the field are still pretty close together. Don't forget, we started with 47 cars. Boothby set off from those green lights, and we're talking like he's won the race at the minute, because it's his race to lose, very much so at the moment. But he set off when those lights went green. He had over a second lead after the first lap, and he's now translated that into 18.5 seconds, and he's not showing any signs of slowing down, because himself, Coquette and Dan Lenson, in 7th, were in the sort of high 33s last time round, so they are still setting the pace. So there's no sign of that gap getting any smaller anytime soon.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be interesting to see whether Dan Lenson, as you mentioned there, obviously being one of the faster guys on track, whether he can try and get a little bit closer to the battle between Warren and Junior just in front of him. He was on the last lap at half a second quicker. See Dimitri Schenk getting under a little bit of pressure in the Rocky Racing Honda NSX from the Audi there, just about managed to get the inside line. Not probably the smoothest line you'd ever see through the first corner here at Misano, and as a result, oh my word, that was the aforementioned Warren and Junior going past him there. And it looked to me, I don't know if you think the same, Steve, but it looked to me like Dimitri managed to get out of the way of the back markers. He was being very sensible, and whoever it was who was in front of him, I think it was Tim Neubauer, he seemed to be looking to make the move on him, and as a result, he's managed to get himself a couple of cars in the way. But Dave Jr. under an immense amount of pressure at the moment into that corner.
Yeah, absolutely. I found my glitch on the cameras. It's whenever I look at James Warren, because he's marked as the pits, it throws the cameras into chaos. So we'll focus on Junior and we'll watch the battle from his perspective. But yeah, he's doing very, very well to defend. But now it is going to be a drag race. This is an out-and-out. See which car's got the most power down the straight, who's running the least aero, who's got the car hugging the ground closest. But they are side by side, and I think Warren's just going to have to drop back in behind. But he's going to have the wider sweep through these last couple of corners. He's actually putting it around the outside. Bit of contact there. The Mercedes did really well. Junior hung on to that, did very, very well, and Warren managed to just ease off the throttle without losing the back end and stayed out of the way of that. I think there was a little bit of contact that set that slide off on the Mercedes.
It certainly looked like it, didn't it? I think James Warren looked like he got. Well, I mean, fair play to him. It looked like he kept his foot in it as he went through those 2 or 3 successive right-handers, and he got into the last one. Looked like he got a little bit of oversteer, clipped the back of Dave Jr. But the way he managed to control that slide was nothing short of sensational. He did a brilliant job managing to keep a hold of that. Fair play to that man. I'm sure he had a little bit of a Brown moment then, no doubt.
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, definite code Brown there. But Hootman in chat just said he's had a disconnect. Again, I won't repeat the first word, but yeah, disconnect. Really unlucky, buddy. Just not great because he was running in second place in the semi-pros, so that's heartbreaking. Obviously, second place in his class, and he's had a disconnect, so that's him out of the race and a DNF effectively. So everything out of his control, nothing he could do about that. So just get back on the practice servers, and we'll see you at Silverstone.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a shame when that happens, especially as far into the race as we are. Obviously, 50 minutes into this race, 10.5 minutes left to go. It looks like this is the closest battle on track at the moment between Warren and Junior, but we do see Banny, who of course, as we've seen a couple of times, has been suspect to taking a few liberties when it comes to track limits. I'll say a few to be politically correct, but he's putting Spilek and Slapek under a lot of pressure and has forced to move quite nicely. He's got a little bit onto the outside curbs, hit those sausages that you can see, got those 3 black and yellow ones on the right hand side of that corner, and shot himself off and wasn't able to keep hold of it, so he's dropped himself back down into 25th, unfortunately. But as I mentioned earlier, Sam Schwenkeling has managed to get himself into 15th place, so he's managed to, despite all of the things going against him, has looked to have managed to get himself back into a points paying position. So fair play to that man. I don't know how much of a gap or how much damage he had to take, but yeah, good to see that he's managed to get himself back into a points paying position. I'm sure he'll be very pleased with that.
Yeah, just a comment in the chat, David, just about your microphone. Sounds like you're coming from a distance. Are you actually at Misano, buddy, or are you at home commentating? Because there just sounds to be a bit of distortion on the mic.
Rest assured, I am maintaining social distancing. I am in my house, not going anywhere at the moment, but we'll try and get that sorted for next time. But appreciate it. Simply Race let us know. That's Mike behind the voice there.
Yeah, absolutely. The man that is SimSport Racing's SimSport Solutions camera production guru, Mike Yao there. Thank you very much, Mike. But Dave Jr. is still defending this position at the moment. He's fighting very hard, but the back markers are now coming into play. Things are getting very close, and we are now down to under 9 minutes left of racing this evening. Everybody's pitted. Everyone's done what they need to do. It's all about avoiding those drive-throughs, the track limits, and we have seen some of the guys running really, really wide, and like I said, just really extending, shall we say, the track limits, and it's not always the best thing to do because this late in the day there is nothing you can do once you get that drive-through. It's going to cost you positions. But 47 cars started. We've had a few retirements, as we've seen in the chat, a couple of guys disconnected. So I think we're still going to finish with well over 40 cars, though, so a fantastic show this evening. There's been some great racing so far, and nothing better than Junior, who's managed to get himself more or less a second according to the relatives at the minute between himself and James Warren, and I think it's actually maybe extending a bit further than that now as the back markers are affecting things. Yeah, absolutely, and there's still a couple of him, so yeah, Dave Jr.'s got the Honda to get past. That might well be Chris Hill, I'd imagine. And you can see James Warren in the background there, a couple of cars behind him. That's going to give Dave Jr. a nice bit of breathing room. I did notice that Dan Lenson was starting to close the gap down a little bit. He was only just over 3 seconds behind James at one point, but it looks like, again, it's just to do with the back markers. We are seeing them obviously coming into effect more and more. We're seeing people at different parts of the track, at different speeds, in different positions in their own respective races, and as a result, it's causing quite a bit of that to-ing and throwing effect on the timing boards. As you can see, times are starting to shift in and out. But again, props to Raimondo, who's still holding on to that top position in the semi-pro class. Still got an 8-second gap ahead of the next man behind him, which is quite a display. And to finish, to currently be in 10th out of, like I say, the remaining running 40 or so cars from a semi-pro driver is quite an impressive feat, you've got to say. Yeah, absolutely, but I think the other driver that's really on the charge at the minute is Marcel. He's lapping consistently faster than Coquette in front of him now, and he's closed that gap down. The back markers are coming into play, but you can see Coquette there, you can see Marcel. That gap was at one point up to around about 4 or 5 seconds, and well, actually when they came out of the pits it was more than that, I believe. So the Bentley, the 969 Bentley of Marcel, he's really he's putting the laps together, and he's still lapping in the mid 33s, which is matching George Boothby, the leader's pace. But Coquette's second place, his last lap was a 34.3. So that's almost, it's around about 3/4 of a second difference, which he's only, what is he? He's around about second behind, second and a half at the moment. So with just under 6 minutes to go, it's not over yet. Just depends how the back markers play into this.
Absolutely, yeah, and obviously ballast on both of these guys, 10 kilos on Marcel, 20 on Niels, but yeah, there looks to be, I mean, well, you look at Niels there, you can just see him just 2 cars ahead of Marcel at the moment. He's right behind a couple of the back markers. He's just managed to circumnavigate one of them. Marcel getting one of the Lexuses coming a little bit down the inside, a little bit of contact between them as well. That would have been a very, very twitchy moment for Marcel, I've no doubt. Not entirely sure what that method of moving out of the way was, but we won't worry too much about that because he has managed to get through it unscathed, and it has meant he's lost a little bit of time. But like I say, 5 minutes left. We're talking probably about 3 laps left, depending on whereabouts George is on the track, who we now fly on board with to see how he's getting on. He's about halfway around the track at the moment. So yeah, probably about 3, maybe 4 laps at a push left in this race. There's still enough time, given the back markers that are around that area of the track, for Marcel to get close and potentially give Niels almost a taste of his own medicine after the incident with Sem Spenkelink a couple of times at the start of this race.
Yeah, absolutely, and there is Sem Spenkelink. You know, he's other than George Boothby, who's pretty much controlled this race from the formation lap to where we are now. I think Sem Spenkelink, big round of applause for Sem. He's obviously, I'm gonna say he got pushed round through probably no fault of his own, really. Dropped way down, decided to go for that early pit stop, and he's clawed his way back up to 15th place. That's no mean feat with all these cars on the track. He won't have had it easy. He'll have had to pass a lot of cars, and I dare say he's potentially maybe even completed the most overtakes this evening. He will have been working the hardest out of a lot of the drivers, so credit to Sem for keeping going and getting that car back up into the top 15. It's maybe not quite over. He's 1.3 back from 14th place. He could maybe gain another place, although with just under 4 minutes left, it's going to be a little bit of a difficult one.
Yeah, absolutely.
James Warren drive through. So that's put paid to his battle on Junior. That just goes to show what happens when you're pushing as hard as you are, and pushing as hard as you can, that you just exceed those limits, and the drive through that's just curtailed it, and he's going to do well to maybe stay in the top 10. Maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye and see where he comes back out. Like I say, yeah, Sem's definitely with a chance of some more positions if he can get lucky on this one. I don't know where he is in terms of if there's any back markers he can use to help with that, but it looks as though with just over 3 minutes remaining in this evening's race here at Misano in the SRHI GT3 Championship, as you see James is into the pits and he's already down to 11th, it looks like. Unfortunately, although he's just coming out of the pits rather, down into 12th as it stands. Yes, it's dropped him right out the top 10. It does look as though Marcel's not going to be able to make too much of a charge on the back of Niels van der Kelk, from what I can imagine, because there doesn't look to be any form of back markers in front of them, and there's still a 2-second gap. So with a couple of laps still to go, I would imagine your top 3, barring any miraculous collapse from any one of these, is going to stay as it is at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. The top 10 is pretty much sorted out now, unless there are any more of those nasty drive-throughs. We've seen the top Pro-Am driver of Raimundai in 9th place, and Vanya in 10th place, second. So that's a good result from those guys in a very, very strong field of GT3s, it has to be said, for those to be in the Pro-Am class as opposed to the Pro class. That's a very solid finish of 9th place and 10th place respectively. So some good driving, but it's looking like Boothby is just taking it away, hasn't he? It's a walk in the park for him. He's turned up tonight. He said it was his favourite track. He was looking forward to this one. 40 kilos of ballast wasn't enough to slow him down. He's really controlled everything. I don't think he's put a foot wrong. We certainly haven't seen him put a foot wrong. He's done what he needs to do, and he's just, I won't say he's even controlled that time, has he? He's just extended. He's just put faster and faster laps in. He's maintained that pace pretty much in the 33s. He's currently the only man with a best lap at the moment, dipping into the 32s, 32.9. But irrespective of that fast lap, all his other laps are pretty much in the 33s. There won't be many outside the 33s tonight, so that is one heck of a consistent drive from him, but not just consistency with speed. So yeah, great hats off to George Boothby again, and I feel sure he's going to be in the commentary box for an interview after the race, so great drive from him.
I imagine he's going to be quite a happy chappy as well, I've no doubt, as he comes on to his final lap in this race here at Misano with SRHI. Plenty of battles ongoing, as you can see, plenty of people all on different points of the track and different points of their races. You can see this one here with Benjamin Simmers of Simmers Racing in the AMG. He is under a lot of pressure from Sam Spenkelink and Ingleworth in the number 30, or in the number 471, the Mercedes. Look at it's still, you wouldn't think it would. It's the last lap of the race. I don't think these guys are a lap down. It looks like George has managed to lap all the way down to Patrick Vanst, who's down in 17th. So these guys are still on the lead lap, so they'll have another lap to go beyond this one. But incredibly, they're still battling all the way down the field. You see, they've nicked too wide through these corners. 2x2 hurrah, as you see it just behind him, and it's Simmons who's somehow managed to come out of that unscathed and keeps himself in 12th place, at least for the time being.
That's it. The clock has hit 0 though now, David, and we are definitely, as you stated, on the last lap. George Boothby is around about halfway. Well, he's beyond halfway around. He's now just about to come back past the main stadium, come round what will be the final corner, and he's going to take 2 from 2 at the SRHI GT3 Championship with what has been an absolutely dominant performance this evening. Nobody came close. Nobody could match him. Round about half a second in qualifying, faster than anybody else. But yeah, absolutely fantastic driving.
Absolutely, yeah, he's absolutely smashed at the park. He's got the perfect race, he's got the pole position, the fastest lap, and the race win. Christian Maustrek's going to come through in 4th place. In between those guys, in between him and George Boothby, we are going to have Niels van der Kelt, who's just crossed the line, and Marcel V just behind him. He's 7/10 in the end. So it's as you were for the top 3 from a couple of weeks ago back at the Nürburgring. But yeah, I mean, George has absolutely dominated that one, as you see Christian Maustrek crossing the line in 4th place. Dave Jr. is going to be taking 5th place, Sidney Dunlenson back there in 6th. We've got Naam there, Arwin Naam back in the Lamborghini in 7th. Tim Muris in the Honda coming through in 8th, and then Giorgio Raimonde and Pete Vania in the top 10. And of course, the last 2 of those, you see Giorgio Raimonde coming over, flashing his lights. He must be absolutely thrilled with that. He's driven a fantastic race in that semi-pro class and brings it home. 9th in overall and top in semi-pro, and an absolutely brilliant job by that man. Sam Spenkelink, of course, we saw getting caught up in a handful of incidents at the start. Is he going to try and get 13th place? No, it looks like he's going to stick for 14th. Still brilliant race from him. He's going to bag himself a couple of championship points, and despite what's happened, I'm sure he's got every reason to be pretty pleased with himself despite what's happened there.
Absolutely great racing from the guys, and yeah, hopefully we'll move into some interviews after this. So yeah, absolutely fantastic race that, David. I think realistically, the leader Boothby set off. Nobody was ever going to touch him. He, unless he made a mistake, which he didn't. It was going to be difficult for anyone to get by him. So great racing from him. But good introduction for you to SRHI GT3. What were your thoughts on that one, buddy?
Well, like you say, yeah, it was a one-man show at the front, but we were fortunate to be blessed with plenty of action up and down the field regardless. Obviously, a couple of incidents, which, like I say, they'll be investigated, I've no doubt. But yeah, brilliant racing for the lads. It's difficult when it's in the night as well. Hour-long race, obviously with the pit stop as well. But yeah, we've seen some brilliant action, and deputising for Alex has been really good fun. And obviously he'll be back in a couple of weeks, I'm sure. So I'll skulk off back to watching the chat as everyone else has been doing this evening. And yeah, hopefully we'll see some brilliant racing at Silverstone in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm sure Silverstone, like Misano, it's got some wide runoff areas. It's got some very fast, long straights, some fast corners. It's got a couple of big curbs as well to watch out for into a couple of the chicanes. But it'll definitely be an interesting one to watch them battle around. But don't forget, we have got the GT4s next week. Next Tuesday evening that is the 23rd of February from Suzuka. Now the GT4s are a very interesting car to watch around Suzuka with that very long start finish straight, because the GT4s do have a very mixed bag of capabilities, and I don't mean drivers, I mean the cars. The top speed of the GT4s varies massively from car to car, so we will see some serious slipstreaming, some overtaking. It will be a good race to watch, so please join us next Tuesday evening for the GT4s. That is round 2 of the SRHI GT4 Championship next Tuesday evening from Suzuka. Just currently waiting for some of the drivers to drop down into our green room so we can drag them into the commentary box and get their thoughts on the race. They're probably just all congratulating each other now in Parc Fermé and just spraying the champagne a little bit, and then they'll be dropping down here to sound off with some enthusiasm, I would say, David.
Absolutely, yeah. Interestingly enough, I'm actually just seeing some of the output from the conversations in the Discord server at the moment, and I can see a little bit of back and forth. Nothing too untoward between James Warren and Dave Jr. It does look like Dave actually couldn't see that James was even on the track. So you mentioned he was in the pits. You mentioned there was an error with his car on that side. From James's point of view, it looks like it was the same for Dave as well, because from what I can understand, he's not even seen James on the track when they had that little coming together, which is interesting indeed. But yeah, like I say, nothing too untoward. Looks like they're all happy with it. Now they know exactly what's happened anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a strange one, was that, because when James went in for his drive-through penalty and he exited the pits, that pit signal the icon next to his name disappeared as if he had exited the pits. So not quite sure what that was about. Obviously, like I said, it's an in-game glitch, is that, I think, with the software. There was something that was beyond our control. So unfortunate that things like that do happen, but we had a couple of disconnects in the sim this evening for some of the drivers, and that's always heartbreaking when you get a disconnect. And as you said, David, so far into the race, it wasn't brilliant for Hoopman to be disconnected, and yeah, he was second in his class, in the Pro-Am class at the time, so even more heartbreaking. But we're just going to give it a few more minutes to see if any of the guys drop down. It seems like they're having too much fun up in the other chat room, but kind of hoping they're going to drop down, so we'll give it a couple more minutes and just see who comes down.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully we'll get the top 3 guys come through, so we should hopefully be able to hear from George Boothby, Niels van der Kerkelt and Marcel V. Of course, the same top 3 as we had from last week. Doesn't mean that this is anywhere near done yet. Of course, we've got 9 rounds in this SRHI Season 3 GT3 Championship. We are heading off to Silverstone next week, as you mentioned. We'll be heading off into the Catalonia region at Barcelona for race number 4. That's on the 30th of March. Zolder on the 13th of April. 60 minutes at Spa on the 4th of May. And then we'll finish off for the last 3 races at Imola on the 18th of May, Suzuka on the 15th of June, and then the Hungaroring to finish off of race number 9 on the 29th of June. And of course, as Steve mentioned there a couple of moments ago, all going to be intertwined with the GT4 action as well. So there's plenty to keep an eye out for. So if you aren't already, you need to go and click that subscribe button and hit that bell notification so that you know when these streams are going live. Obviously, every couple of weeks they will be coming out, and you'll be able to see plenty of brilliant racing. I think just see George in the green room, so we'll try and get him in a second just to see how he got on this evening.
Good evening, George.
Hello, you all right?
Well, yeah, I'm probably not as good as you, buddy. 2 from 2. Bloody hell. Pole position, fastest lap, race win, and it didn't look like anyone was going to get close to you tonight. It was, to be fair, we gave you some camera time, but not as much as some of the guys. You just pretty much drove off into the distance. Was it as easy as it looked?
I was pushing a lot, but it did feel good to just, if, let's say I had a bit of a wiggle, or if I did feel a bit under pressure, I could back off a bit. So it was controlled. I just don't know why I've got pace around here. I don't know why. Like, I don't know if I've done like something magic with the setup, but this is like, I don't know, this is like my best track on the game, I think. So I, yeah.
No, you did
a good win there.
Yeah, you did say last time you were in the interview room that Misano you were looking forward to, and it was one of your favourite tracks. But that start you got tonight was mega. You were around about just over halfway around the first lap. I think you'd got virtually a second gap to second place. That was unheard of. You don't normally see that. It was amazing. You got yourself so far out of trouble that I don't think anybody actually attempted an overtake on you tonight.
Yeah, I really focused on the outlap of like keeping my tires as warm as possible, so really dragging the brakes, and it really helped me coming out of corners, just getting traction on that first lap, because I noticed the guy behind was, his rear was sliding all over the place, and obviously the first lap it is quite hard to control it, but yeah, just warming the tires made a big difference there, and it let me get that little gap at the start, and then managed to pull a bit more as the race went on.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously with the night race, the temperatures are a bit cooler, so it's obviously very important to maintain those temps and keep everything right. And yeah, you obviously did a very good job. But again, pit stop wise, it looked faultless, pretty much in and out, and then you sort of dropped back around about 10th place you were, I think, when you came out, somewhere around there. And it wasn't many laps before you were back up in the lead. So back markers, did they all behave this evening? You seem to be cutting through them very easily. Oh yeah, everyone was really, really respectful. It's one of the things I like most about this league. Like, everyone's just super respectful on the track. Like, I don't think I've flashed my lights once, because people just happily letting me through, being really clever where they let me through, so we lose as least time as possible, each of us. So yeah, absolute top notch, like really good driving tonight. I really loved it. Well, great stuff. I mean, what will you take from tonight going forward for Silverstone? I mean, what can we expect at Silverstone? Because obviously SRHI GT3 is turning into the George Boothby show at the moment. Is it going to be a hat trick of wins? Are you brave enough and bold enough to say, yeah, I'm on for the win at Silverstone? You're going to carry that speed forward and the consistency?
Let's go for it. You know what? Let's go for it. Let's get the hat trick.
Yeah, good man. I mean, I must say, I did say on the stream, so you can watch it back. I stand by what I said. Your consistency. It's not just consistency; it's the speed as well. You were pretty much 33s all the way through there. There was the odd 34, but I put that down to the odd back marker at places where you were catching them. But most of your laps, I dare say, if you look at the stats at the end of the race, there probably most of them are in the 33s. So that's not just great consistency, but that's fantastic race pace as well.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a struggle with the ballast, because I could definitely feel the car wanted to slide a bit more, but I don't know if it's just I've got a crazy setup or what, but it just stuck like glue to every corner. Felt amazing.
Great stuff, buddy. Well, I mean, David, can you add anything to that? Because I've run out of superlatives, I think, mate.
I don't think you can you? Like you say, mastered it, start to finish, big old gap at the start. Like you say, I was exactly the same, funnily enough. I think you were going down the back straight. You mentioned about how courteous the back markers were. I didn't see you flash your lights once whenever we caught you on camera. So they're clearly doing something right, because if that was me, I'd have been flashing them like nobody's business. So yeah, absolutely smashed it, buddy. Well done. Yeah, really interested to see if you can carry on this great form into Silverstone in a couple of weeks' time.
Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
No problem, George. Good luck, mate, and we'll look forward to seeing you at Silverstone, buddy. Thank you.
Right, take care. Thank you.
Bye. I think, David, that's just about it. I don't think the rest of the podium guys, they're obviously slurping too much champagne and patting each other on the back too much to come and talk to the likes of us this evening. So I think that pretty much, from me, wraps up the stream. Final thoughts from you, buddy?
Yeah, like you say, plenty of action. It sort of dropped into pockets in the end, didn't it? So we saw plenty of different battles going on the field. Obviously, as we mentioned a few times, there's going to be a couple of bits that I've no doubt will need to be investigated. So any results that you will have seen on the screen, they'll obviously be confirmed, and they'll be provisional as it stands, and they'll be out in due course once the guys have had a chance to submit their thoughts through to the stewards, and they'll get reviewed. Like I say, obviously saw a couple of bits in terms of server issues, which unfortunately is beyond our control, but we'll obviously avoid them wherever we can. But yeah, it's been a brilliant evening. Great fun to jeopardise for Alex for this evening, and hopefully, I know I'm going to be coming back at some point in the future, and hopefully it's not too far away, because that was brilliant fun.
Yeah, it was great fun, mate, and thank you very much for deputising for Alex. And I think he may be quaking in his boots because we might have found a replacement if he ever wants to move along. You did a great job, buddy. It's not always easy jumping into a fresh championship when you don't know all the drivers, but to be fair, the drivers make it easy for us at SRHI because the racing, as we've said, was fantastic. So, but thank you very much, David, and thank you everybody for watching. And as I said, don't forget, next week we are at Suzuka with the GT4, so please tune in for that. If you don't already subscribe to the channel, subscribe, and can I suggest you hit the notification bell, and then you won't miss any of these fantastic streams for the rest of the season. And let's see what shakes out at the GT4s at Suzuka. And GT3s will be back on the 16th of the 3rd at Silverstone. So, yeah. Cracking. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.